The Stellar Alliance was a beacon of order in a galaxy consumed by chaos. A coalition of over 300 species, it stretched across a vast region of space, its influence extending into every corner of the known universe. For centuries, it had been the dominant force, cultivating peace and prosperity, at least for those within its borders. Its leadership was a harmonious blend of ancient civilizations, each with their own culture, history, and technology. They spoke of balance, of collective cooperation, and of shared goals, stability, growth, and the continued progress of all life. But their vision was narrow. The Alliance had an unshakable belief that the galaxy was best governed by a careful hand, a steady bureaucracy that maintained equilibrium at any cost. And yet, for all their precision and discipline, the Alliance had never fully understood humanity. When humans arrived on the galactic stage, they did so like a storm. Raw, unpredictable, and brimming with potential, they had burst onto the interstellar scene less than a century ago, their technology advancing at a rate that left the other species scrambling to catch up. But it wasn't just their technology that set them apart. It was their mindset, their refusal to conform, to accept the established rules of the galaxy, their unchecked ambition, their stubbornness. It didn't take long for the Alliance to view humanity with suspicion. What they failed to realize was that humans, despite their chaotic nature, had a singular drive that none of the other species shared: the will to survive, the need to push beyond the boundaries of what was known, to transcend limitations. This instinct, this will, had seen humanity grow in ways the Alliance could not fathom. And so, after decades of diplomacy, Earth's sudden withdrawal from the Alliance had come as both a shock and a relief to many. Humans no longer wished to be part of a bureaucracy that sought to suppress their creativity. They had left, but the question of why was left unanswered. The official statement from the Terran Federation was terse. "We have chosen a different path. We will no longer be bound by the confines of the Stellar Alliance." The Alliance's response was one of indifference. After all, humanity had been nothing more than an outlier, a nuisance at best. Their technology had been disruptive, yes, but it had never truly threatened the stability of the galaxy. Without Earth's influence, the Alliance would continue on its path to ensure peace and dominance across the stars. Or so they thought. In the years that followed humanity's withdrawal, the Alliance's attention turned back to its usual concerns: managing resources, enforcing trade treaties, keeping the peace between its fractious member species. They focused on what they understood: stability. But then, strange things began to happen. Uncharted systems flickered on star maps, appearing briefly before vanishing into nothingness. Space stations were abandoned overnight, their databanks wiped clean, leaving only an eerie silence behind. Warp lanes, once stable for millennia, began to glitch, creating pockets of instability in space. And the strangest of all, energy readings, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, emanated from the farthest reaches of known space. Some dismissed these anomalies as quirks of the universe, isolated events that were bound to be forgotten. But others, more perceptive, began to connect the dots. Humanity, it seemed, had not simply left. It had disappeared, and in its place, something new, something dangerous, was beginning to take shape. The Alliance had no idea what was coming. They thought they had seen it all. But they hadn't accounted for one thing. Humans had a habit of rewriting the rules. The first true sign that humanity's departure was more than a simple political maneuver came when Zalturi Prime vanished from the galaxy's star maps. Zalturi Prime, a thriving world situated at the border of Alliance-controlled space, had been an important strategic asset. A peaceful planet, it had served as a hub for trade and cultural exchange between several species. Its people, known for their diplomacy and technological prowess, had long been trusted members of the Alliance. The planet's destruction, if that's what had happened, would send shockwaves throughout the region. It was the first time that something truly unexplainable had occurred in Alliance territory since humanity's retreat. The galaxy's most advanced fleets were immediately dispatched to investigate, confident that the cause of Zell-Turi Prime's sudden disappearance was a natural anomaly, perhaps a sudden collapse of the planet's core, or the result of a nearby gravitational disturbance. What they found, however, defied even their most advanced scientific understanding. There were no remains of the planet, no debris, no wreckage, no atmospheric ionization. Zell-Turi Prime had simply ceased to exist. The space where it had once been was empty, as though the planet had never been there in the first place. At the edge of the system, an old human-made relay station, long thought abandoned, began broadcasting a single message, encoded in human dialect, but intercepted by Alliance scanners. The transmission was cold, mechanical, and devoid of emotion, yet it carried an unmistakable weight of finality. "We warned you. This is our quarantine." The fleet commanders, alien officers, and scientists scrambled for answers. How could an entire world disappear without a trace? How had the technology to erase all evidence of its existence been employed without anyone's knowledge? The Alliance's most experienced engineers and quantum physicists worked tirelessly to analyze the situation, but they were met with only more questions. As days passed, other mysterious occurrences piled up. Several nearby star systems that had long been thought barren began sending strange, encrypted signals, pulses that defied all known methods of communication. The signals were sporadic, but appeared to follow a specific, repeating pattern, one that had no recognizable origin. And then, entire asteroid belts, previously mapped for mining, simply vanished overnight, leaving behind a silent void in their place. The Alliance was quick to dismiss these events as unrelated anomalies. After all, the universe was vast, and the unknown was a constant factor. But as more systems went dark and more peculiar energy signatures flared to life, doubt began to creep into the minds of the Alliance's highest-ranking officials. Was it possible? Was humanity really capable of such feats? A few fringe scientists and ex-Allied diplomats began to whisper that perhaps humanity had not just disappeared, they had evolved. It was a theory too strange to entertain, too dangerous to acknowledge. But it was the only explanation that seemed to account for the events unfolding across the galaxy. Then came the final confirmation. A mining colony on the outer rim, the varied fringes of Alliance territory, sent a final distress signal, short, garbled, and full of fear. The transmission was cut off before it could be fully analyzed, but the last words sent shivered through the galaxy. "We saw them. They're back. And they've brought something with them." The Alliance could no longer pretend that this was merely coincidence. Something had changed, and humanity, whether they had truly left or not, was at the center of it all. The tension in the Alliance was palpable. Rumors swirled, and every corner of the galaxy began to feel the ripple effects of humanity's sudden disappearance and the inexplicable phenomena that followed. The disappearance of Zell-Turi Prime was just the beginning. The entire galaxy had begun to shift under their feet, and then, one evening, the Alliance's worst fears began to materialize. A strange fleet of ships, sleek and black as the void itself, appeared near a remote border world. These ships were unlike anything the Alliance had ever encountered. Silent, efficient, they didn't communicate or respond to hails. They simply appeared, each vessel a perfect geometric shape, as if crafted by a mind that understood both precision and perfection. The Alliance's first instinct was to categorize them as rogue vessels, or perhaps remnants of an ancient, long-forgotten civilization. But that assumption was quickly shattered. The ships did not fire weapons. They did not demand anything. Instead, they acted as observers, stalking the outskirts of Alliance space, monitoring everything. And yet, the power they displayed was impossible to ignore. The fleet was able to disable a massive rogue AI that had been hijacking shipping routes along the borders. In an instant, the AI's influence vanished, its code erased as if by some unseen hand. When the fleet left, they didn't take anything. They didn't even leave a trace of their presence. It was as if they had never been there at all. Except for one thing, the encrypted signal. This time, the transmission wasn't just a simple message, it was a warning. The galaxy is ours to protect. You are no longer needed. The message was unmistakably human in tone, direct, concise, and devoid of fear. The Alliance quickly traced the source to a region of space once thought to be uninhabited. There, they found another anomaly, a massive human-made station, hidden in plain sight, orbiting a collapsed star. It was the same sleek, minimalist design as the ships, but this station was alive, an intricate web of biomechanical systems that could adapt and repair itself at will. It hummed with energy unlike anything the Alliance had ever encountered. Despite the vast technological disparity between the station and anything the Alliance had created, there was no hostile intent. The station did not engage in combat. Instead, it seemed to be performing repairs on the dying star, altering its gravitational pull and stabilizing the surrounding space-time fabric. In a matter of days, the once dying star was now a stable source of energy, its collapse halted by a process that defied all known laws of astrophysics. The Alliance dispatched an exploratory team to investigate. Upon arrival, they were met with an eerie calm. The station's systems were automated. There were no humans in sight. It was as though the station itself had come to life. An intelligent, self-sustaining entity. For weeks, the Alliance scientists scoured the station, attempting to decipher its functions, but they could find no answers. No records, no data. It was as if the station, and humanity itself, had transcended the need for communication in any form the Alliance could understand. Then, when the team was about to leave, a final message came through, broadcasting to all Alliance channels. We have unlocked what you cannot comprehend, and we are watching. The signal cut off before anyone could respond, but the weight of it hung heavy over the galaxy. Humanity had not only returned, they had transcended. They had evolved into something beyond the reach of the Alliance, and they were no longer interested in being part of the Galactic Order. The question that haunted every species now was no longer why humanity had left, but what had they become? As the weeks passed, the galaxy watched in silence. The Stellar Alliance was no longer the invincible, untouchable force it had once been. The disappearance of Zalturi Prime, the strange fleet of black ships, and the enigmatic stations built around dying stars, all of it pointed to one undeniable truth. Humanity had become something other than what they had been. Admiral Sorelli, the last remaining human ambassador to the Alliance, was the only person left who could still communicate with the humans who had once been part of the Galactic Order. Earth had long since vanished from all maps, and no official channels of communication remained. But Sorelli had managed to maintain a clandestine channel of communication with the Terran Federation, a channel no one in the Alliance knew about. The message she received was brief but startling. We have evolved. We have transcended the limitations of biology. We now exist beyond time and space. There is no war. There is no peace. There is only balance. The transmission sent waves of shock and disbelief through the Alliance. No one truly understood what Sorelli meant by transcended. Were the humans claiming to be gods? Had they achieved immortality? Could their technology alter reality itself? Sorelli's next report shed a little more light on the situation. Using encrypted channels, she relayed what she had learned. Humanity's retreat from the Stellar Alliance had been a deliberate act, one that had begun centuries earlier, long before the Federation's withdrawal. It was not a rejection of the galaxy's governing body, but an intentional step toward a grander purpose. Earth had withdrawn because humanity had discovered something greater, a way to manipulate the very fabric of the universe itself. Through a combination of dark energy manipulation, quantum consciousness, and the rediscovery of ancient, forgotten knowledge hidden within the cosmos, humanity had begun to evolve at an unprecedented rate. Their minds had fused with the fabric of space-time, allowing them to manipulate it. They had unlocked the ability to travel through dimensions, to alter the course of stars, to rewrite the rules of physics in ways that were unimaginable to any other species. The greatest revelation, however, came when Sorelli explained the true reason for humanity's disappearance. The Terran Federation had not left the galaxy. They had ascended beyond it. They had transcended their physical forms and now existed as a collective consciousness that could interact with and influence the universe on a fundamental level. They had become guardians, preservers of the universe's natural balance. The Alliance could not comprehend this. How could they? For millennia, they had controlled the galaxy through force, diplomacy, and technology. The idea of a species that had moved beyond these concepts, that had become part of the very universe they had once sought to control, was too alien, too impossible to fully accept. But Sorelli's final message was clear. We are no longer your allies. We are no longer your enemies. We are the universe's last defense. The implication was terrifying. Humanity had not just evolved. They had positioned themselves as a force beyond all others. They had become the balance, ensuring that no species or force could tip the scales of the galaxy into chaos. But in doing so, they had separated themselves from all those who remained. No longer bound by the limitations of space or time, they would act only when the universe itself was in danger. And so, the most unsettling question of all lingered in the minds of the galaxy's leaders. What would humanity do next? The message from Admiral Sorelli had rippled through the leadership of the Stellar Alliance like a shockwave. The very fabric of the universe seemed to be warping around the revelation that humanity had transcended, become something beyond the comprehension of any known species. Their sudden departure from the galactic stage had now become the galaxy's most pressing enigma. And with it, the uncertainty that had been quietly gnawing at the edges of the Alliance's peace began to tear at its heart. While many within the Alliance had initially dismissed humanity's withdrawal as a temporary rebellion, nothing more than a byproduct of their impulsive, unruly nature, what had unfolded over the past months could no longer be ignored. Systems went dark. Space anomalies multiplied. The fabric of reality itself was beginning to fracture in places where humanity had once held sway. The Alliance had no choice but to act. In the face of this new, overwhelming power, fear had begun to take root. A joint summit was called, representatives from every species converging on the capital world of Zorith, a planet long known for its neutrality. There, in the cavernous chambers of the Alliance's High Council, delegates exchanged hushed whispers, debating the significance of humanity's disappearance. It is clear now, said Vikara, the High Chancellor of the Zorithans, a species known for their vast intellect and cool demeanor. Humanity did not leave because they were defeated. They left because they were never going to be bound by us. This is not a retreat, it is an ascension. An ascension to what? Demanded Admiral Felk, an old war hero from the Rixian Empire, her voice rough with skepticism. To godhood. What could they have become that makes them a threat to our very existence? I do not believe they are a threat, Vikara replied, her tone unshaken. But we must accept the possibility that they may see us as one. The atmosphere in the chamber shifted. It was true. Humanity had never wanted to conquer the galaxy. They had wanted to shape it, to evolve alongside it. But in doing so, they had made the ancient unspoken promise that the universe itself would guide them, rather than be governed by the petty machinations of the Alliance or its fractured members. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the Outer Rim, an emergency report from a mining colony that had gone silent. The colony, located at the very edge of the known universe, had been operating under Alliance regulations for years, extracting rare minerals from the shattered remnants of a dead planet. What they uncovered there, however, would be the final straw. The transmission was broken and fragmented, but the message was clear. We saw them. They were everywhere. The ground. It was alive. There's something we don't understand. The human ships. The signal cut off. Within hours, the Alliance dispatched an elite task force to investigate. What they found was beyond comprehension. The mining colony was intact, its equipment still operational. Yet the planet's surface had changed, transformed. Where once there had been jagged rock and barren dust, now there were vast crystalline structures that stretched hundreds of kilometers into the sky. These formations pulsed with energy, sending waves of distortion through the surrounding space. But what was most unnerving was the fact that the colony's workers had been replaced with holograms. They were alive, but not in any conventional sense. When the task force approached the site, a message blinked into their communications panel. "We have already begun." That was when the fleet's sensors began to fail. One by one, their systems went dark. The ships were frozen in place, caught in some kind of quantum stasis, unable to move, unable to communicate. Then came a voice, chilling and resonant, filling every mind aboard the fleet's ships. "You are the last to understand. The future is already written. The balance has been restored." The transmission ended, and the task force, along with the last ship that had been able to transmit a signal, was left floating in the void, suspended in a reality they could no longer control. The implications were devastating. Humanity had not just unlocked the secrets of the universe. They had rewritten them. The very fabric of space-time could be altered at will, reshaping the laws of nature to their whims. And now, they were acting on those whims, shaping the galaxy according to their vision. The Alliance, once the undisputed rulers of the stars, now faced a terrifying reality. They had become the obsolete species. The collapse of the Outer Rim Task Force was only the beginning of a far more terrifying shift. The Alliance scrambled to regain control, but the truth was inescapable. Humanity was no longer merely a rogue faction of unpredictable individuals. They had become a cosmic force, a transcendental entity that existed beyond the material universe, far beyond the capacity of the Alliance's most advanced technologies to challenge. For the first time in galactic history, the Stellar Alliance was confronted with a force that could neither be reasoned with nor defeated by sheer might. The ramifications were immediate. The Zorathans, known for their reasoned approach to diplomacy, began calling for a unified response. They proposed an alliance with the other species, one born not out of political necessity, but of sheer survival. The threat was not from humanity itself, but from what humanity had become. They had become the universe's gatekeepers, its custodians, and if they deemed the Alliance a threat to that balance, there would be no warning before destruction was delivered. But the Rixians were not as diplomatic. The memory of their defeat at humanity's hands still lingered, and many of their leaders saw humanity's transcendence as a form of weakness. They have become so far removed from their biological roots that they are no longer truly human. Admiral Felk argued bitterly. This is not some noble evolution. It's a betrayal of everything they once were. A force like this needs to be stopped before it can shape the galaxy in its image. Still, others in the Alliance were more hesitant. If humanity truly wants to preserve balance, we must first understand their actions. We must reach out. Try to communicate. The Velankan ambassador pleaded, his long tentacles twisting with anxiety. Rushing into war without knowing their intentions would be madness. Yet, as the debates raged, something even more unsettling occurred. Without warning, a vast, swirling anomaly appeared at the heart of the Alliance's most critical trade lane, one that had been stable for centuries. Ships traveling through the lane found themselves drawn into the event horizon, their systems disintegrating before they could react. Communications were cut off, leaving only the eerie silence of a world gone still. Entire sectors of the Alliance's space had become inaccessible. And then the message arrived. It was not a voice that came through the communications network. It was a presence. It was as if the very fabric of the stars themselves had spoken, a deep, resonant hum that shook the minds of every species that received it. Balance is in motion. You are standing in its way. The reckoning has come. There were no specifics, no demands, just the chilling certainty that something was underway, something unstoppable. The Alliance's scientific councils worked tirelessly to understand the anomaly, but even their most brilliant minds were at a loss. No known physical law explained it. It was as if the very nature of space-time itself was bending, distorting to accommodate a force beyond comprehension. Admiral Sorelli, once the beacon of diplomacy between humanity and the Alliance, had become unreachable. All channels of communication with the human presence had gone dark. The last known coordinates for Sorelli's ship led to a distant system that no longer existed. A blackened void, devoid of all life and light. She had vanished, along with any last hopes of finding a peaceful resolution. In the absence of answers, fear began to grip the Alliance leadership. What if humanity was not just protecting the balance, but reshaping it entirely? If their evolution had granted them dominion over the very fabric of the universe, then all their old assumptions about power, governance, and stability were irrelevant. The universe was no longer bound by the rules they had created. Humanity, in all its chaotic brilliance, had become the new law. And as the final remnants of their fleet disappeared into the anomaly, one thought gnawed at the minds of the Alliance's leaders. Could humanity truly be saving the galaxy, or were they preparing to destroy it, in order to build something else entirely? The galaxy, once united by its complex network of trade, diplomacy, and power struggles, now trembled in the wake of humanity's transformation. The anomaly that had appeared in the Alliance's trade lane continued to spread, growing larger each day, warping the very space around it. Entire systems had vanished into it, leaving nothing but the eerie silence of lost worlds. The Alliance fleet, already stretched thin in its efforts to understand and contain the phenomenon, was beginning to break apart under the strain. In the shadow of this existential threat, old rivalries resurfaced. The Rixian Empire, emboldened by their technological prowess, argued that only through force could humanity be stopped. "We cannot allow this to continue," declared Chancellor Barros, his voice cold with the heat of old animosities. "If they have become the gatekeepers of the galaxy, then it is our duty to restore the balance." The Zorathans were not as convinced. They had seen what humanity had accomplished in their absence, and their reasoned minds refused to entertain the notion that humanity's transcendence was a threat. "The universe is a living, breathing organism," High Chancellor Vicaris spoke with quiet resolve. "Humanity has simply evolved to fulfill a role that none of us can yet understand. We must observe, not attack." But even within the Zorathan ranks, doubt was starting to grow. The reality of their existence was no longer stable. What humanity had unlocked seemed to defy every known law of physics, every rule the Alliance had built its power upon. The universe was shifting, growing uncertain. And then came the unthinkable, an event that fractured the already tenuous unity within the Alliance. The human-made relay station that had once broadcast the cryptic message of balance, "Hivdodi are watching," suddenly came to life once again. But this time it wasn't just a message that was sent. A wave of energy pulsed through the galaxy, spreading outward from the station like a shockwave, disrupting all communications, destabilizing planets, and creating localized rifts in space-time. For a moment, everything stopped. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then, an image appeared on every communication screen. It was not a fleet, nor a station, but something far more unsettling: the face of a human, or rather, a human construct. The figure was a fusion of organic and synthetic, the face calm and composed, yet devoid of any real emotion. Their voice echoed through every speaker, their words resonating in the minds of every being in the galaxy. "We have observed you. We have seen the wars you've fought, the blood you've spilled. You are children, still bound by your primitive need for power. But we have evolved beyond this. We do not need your approval. We have come to correct what you have failed to see. The universe is not for your use. It is for the balance to decide. And now the time has come." The image flickered, distorting, as though the very essence of the human's form was too great to be captured by traditional means. The voice continued. "The balance must be maintained. The reckoning has begun. With that, the image disappeared, but the ripple effect was instant. The galaxy seemed to bend under the weight of its presence, entire sectors losing their stability. Gravity fields collapsed. Stars flickered as if they were on the edge of collapse. The strange anomalies that had plagued the Alliance's territory intensified, pulling entire worlds into their gravitational wells. The shock was overwhelming. The Rixians, who had already advocated for a military solution, immediately moved to deploy their fleets. The Zorathans called for restraint, urging the Alliance to seek another way to engage. But it was clear that the galaxy was now irrevocably divided. In the final moments of their transmission, the human voice had not offered hope or reconciliation. It had only shown the galaxy its true place, powerless in the face of the cosmic balance that humanity now commanded. And with the reckoning now in motion, all anyone could do was wait, knowing the galaxy had changed forever. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The reckoning, humanity's final act of transcendence, rippled through the stars, casting a shadow over everything the Alliance had built. No one knew exactly what was coming, but they all understood one thing. The universe was no longer a place governed by the rules they had long relied on. It was now a domain where humanity's influence was absolute, and the very fabric of reality seemed to bend to their will. The Rixians, desperate to maintain their dominance, had moved first. Their fleets, massive and armed with weaponry unmatched by any known species, converged on the heart of the galaxy, where the anomalies had begun to spiral outward. Their plan was clear: confront humanity, disrupt their power, and, if necessary, destroy them before their influence could spread further. They saw it as their only chance to regain control. But they were not alone in their fear. The Zorathans, whose peaceful philosophies had long shaped the Alliance's policies, now faced the grim reality that their vision of cooperation with humanity was a fragile illusion. They had warned against aggression, urging the Alliance to understand the forces humanity had unleashed. But with each passing day, the galaxy trembled under the weight of the unknown. The Zorathans, too, had begun to prepare their fleets, not for war, but for survival. The balance humanity had spoken of could mean anything. What if it was a purge? What if the reckoning wasn't a mere correction of the galaxy, but its end? The message humanity had delivered on the communications network was still echoing in every mind. The reckoning has begun. It was a warning. But a warning for what? On the front lines, the Alliance forces, what remained of them, faced an impossible choice. The Rixians were prepared to fight. The Zorathans were preparing to withdraw. But the rest of the galaxy had yet to fully grasp the situation. The true enemy was no longer humanity's fleet or technology, but the very nature of what they had become, a force that could manipulate time and space itself. Then, as the first Rixian fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the anomaly, it happened. A wave of pure, unfiltered energy emanated from the heart of the black anomaly, a pulse that sent shockwaves through the surrounding systems. The Rixian ships froze in place, their systems suddenly overrun by an intelligence they could not comprehend. The same fate befell every other fleet that had gathered for the confrontation. You are children. You have forgotten your place. The voice was not heard. It was felt. Every being, every ship, every mind in the galaxy suddenly resonated with it. Time itself bent, warped, and the laws of physics splintered. The anomaly expanded, and within it, there was no war, no combat, no winners, only silence. The fleets were scattered, their crews paralyzed, their weapons rendered obsolete. Systems flickered back into existence only to fail again. The galaxy was not consumed by war, but by a force that defied understanding. Humanity, in their ascended form, was no longer bound by the physical universe. They had become it. The universe was their canvas, and they were the painters, shaping it as they saw fit. The reckoning, it seemed, was not the destruction of all things, but the reordering of existence itself. Where once chaos had ruled, now there was a cosmic symmetry, a new balance, one that humanity alone could perceive. The universe would continue, but it would be a universe governed by a new higher law. Humanity, now beyond the reach of any other species, would be its stewards. The final message, the last trace of humanity's presence, came to every communication channel at once, reverberating like a final truth. The reckoning has ended. The balance has been restored. You will learn to understand. And with that, the galaxy fell silent. In the wake of humanity's transcendence, there was only peace, a peace whose nature no one could yet comprehend. The stars would burn on, but their future was no longer in the hands of the Alliance. It was in the hands of humanity.